Yiros, the unconventional son, a portrait in mouse ears and misunderstanding. Yiros MC, a name like a question. He lived in a small Australian town, the kind of town where everyone knew your business or thought they did. Yiros was different. Most folks saw the surface, the bright clothes, sometimes a skirt, flowing like a defiant flag. He loved them. They felt right, like sunshine on his skin. His father, though, his father saw a problem, a deviation, a son who wasn't quite the blueprint he'd imagined for the family name. He collected Mickey Mouse memorabilia. Figurines lined his shelves, posters smiled from his walls. Mickey was his hero, steadfast, cheerful, always. Yiros found comfort in those round ears, in that unchanging, optimistic grin. It was a simple love, a pure love. Some called it childish. Yiros called it essential, like air or water, or the sweet cold comfort of a double scoop ice cream on a scorching day. His father never understood the Mickey thing, or the dresses, or much about Yiros at all, it often seemed. His small apartment was a burst of color, a rebellion against the beige world outside. Sequins shimmered on a jacket, a feather boa draped a chair, and Mickey. Mickey was everywhere, a silent, smiling confidant. Yiros worked part-time at the local library, stacking books, mending spines. He liked the quiet there, the smell of old paper and stories. It was a place where difference could hide, where imagination was king, and he could almost forget the gap between himself and his stern, disapproving father, a man carved from hard wood. His father, Arthur, was a man of straight lines, of rugby and beer, of expectations met. Yiros was a splash of vibrant paint on Arthur's monochrome canvas, a son who preferred musicals to matches, bright silks to sensible cotton. Arthur's love, Yiros felt, was conditional, measured, often withheld. Yiros tried in his own way, but being himself was a battle fought daily, a quiet internal war. With Mickey as his only reliable soldier, always by his side, offering a gloved, supportive hand. Then his father died. Suddenly, a phone call shattered a Tuesday morning. The world tilted, went grey, Arthur MC gone, just like that. Yiros felt a strange hollowness, not just sadness, something more complex, a tangle of regret, unsaid words, unresolved hurts. He remembered his father's hands, strong, calloused, capable of fixing anything, except it seemed the fragile bond between them. A bond stretched thin by years of unspoken disappointments and mismatched dreams. He drove to his father's empty house. The silence was loud, deafening. Arthur's armchair sat vacant. His smell, faintly of pipe tobacco and old books, lingered in the air. Yiros walked through the rooms, each object a memory. A photograph on the mantelpiece. Father and son. Years ago, before the distance grew so wide. Before Yiros understood that his own heart beat to a rhythm his father couldn't or wouldn't hear. He found a half-eaten tub of vanilla bean ice cream in the freezer. His father's favorite. Yiros ate it, slowly, each spoonful a cold, sweet ache. The relationship had been a landscape of peaks and deep valleys, moments of grudging approval, rare, precious, followed by long stretches of disapproval, of unspoken criticism that hung heavy in the air. Yiros craved his father's acceptance, like a parched man craves water, but Arthur saw weakness in Yiros' softness, strangeness in his joy for flamboyant things. He wanted a son cast in his own image, solid, unyielding, predictable. Yiros was none of these things. He was a kaleidoscope, ever shifting, ever bright. Yiros remembered a specific argument, years ago, about a bright pink shirt Yiros had bought. His father had called it an embarrassment. Yiros had shouted back, hot, angry words. The memory burned now, a fresh wound. He wished he could take it back, wished he could explain that the colors, the fabrics, the Mickey Mouse ears, they weren't a joke. They were him, his truth. But the chance was gone, lost in the sudden finality of death, leaving only the bitter taste of vanilla and regret. Yiros had a temper, a quick, hot thing. It flared up like a struck match, unexpected, sometimes fierce. It was a defense, perhaps, against the hurt, against the feeling of being perpetually misunderstood when the world pressed too hard, when the disapproval became a physical weight. The anger would boil over, words would fly, sharp, regrettable, leaving a trail of scorched earth in their wake. He hated that part of himself, the part that lost control, the part that mirrored, in its own chaotic way, his father's rigid disapproval. He once threw a vintage Mickey Mouse alarm clock, smashed it against the wall, because his brother Tom had made a casual, cutting remark about Yiros's Mickey obsession. The anger had been instant, blinding. The shattered plastic and twisted hands of the clock reflected his own fractured state. Afterwards, the shame was immense. The guilt, a heavy cloak. He'd meticulously glued Mickey back together, but the cracks remained. A visible reminder of his internal fault lines, his inability to always master the storm. This anger was a lonely companion. It pushed people away, even those he wanted close. His father had often been a trigger, a dismissive word, a disappointed sigh, and Yiros would feel the heat rise, the familiar tightening in his chest. He'd tried to manage it. Deep breaths, counting to 10. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes the dam just broke, and the floodwaters of his rage would surge, leaving him exhausted and ashamed. He yearned for a calm he rarely found, a steady peace. The doctors had given it names. Intermittent explosive disorder, said it was about control, or the lack of it. Yiros just knew it felt like a monster, living inside him, a monster fed by years of small hurts, big misunderstandings, the constant grinding pressure to be someone else, someone normal, someone his father could proudly call son. The monster was quiet now, in the face of grief, but Yiros knew it was still there, sleeping, waiting for its moment to roar back to life. The funeral was a blur of black suits, somber faces, whispered condolences. Yiros wore his best dark suit, no Mickey tie, no bright colors. He tried to be small, invisible, for his father, for his family. His brother Tom, stoic and grim, handled the arrangements. Tom was the reliable one, the one who fit, the one Arthur had understood, or so it seemed. Yiros felt like an outsider, a brightly colored bird at a crow's convention, even in his muted attire. He had written a eulogy, poured his heart onto the page, words about his father, the good, the bad, the complicated truth. He wanted to share it, to speak his piece, to say goodbye in his own way. He imagined standing there, his voice trembling, but finding the courage, finding the words. It was important. A final, desperate attempt to connect, to be heard, to bridge the chasm that had always existed between him and Arthur, even in death. He clutched the folded paper in his pocket, a lifeline. But then Tom approached him, just before the service, his face set. "Yiros," he said, his voice low, "maybe it's best if I do the main speech. And Uncle Barry, keep it traditional." The unspoken words hung heavy. "You're too much, too unpredictable. You'll make a scene. You'll embarrass us." Yiros felt the familiar heat rise. The monster stirred, but he swallowed it down. The grief was too raw, the setting too sacred for an outburst. He just nodded, a small, jerky movement. The paper in his pocket felt like lead. He sat through the service, numb, listening to Uncle Barry talk about Arthur, the respected businessman. Tom spoke of Arthur, the strong father. It was all true, but it wasn't the whole truth, not Yiros's truth. His eulogy remained unread. A silent scream in his pocket. The exclusion was a fresh wound, deeper than he expected. It confirmed his place, outside, looking in, even now. even at his own father's farewell. The silence was a final, painful rejection. A door slammed shut. Section 5. A mouse, a mission, a miles-long road, the eulogy's escape. Days later, the idea sparked, bright, a little bit mad, like Yiros himself. If he couldn't speak at the funeral, he'd find another audience. An audience that understood, or at least wouldn't judge. The annual Mouseketeers Unite convention in Queensland, hundreds of miles away, a gathering of Mickey lovers. His people. He would read his eulogy there, for his father, for himself. It felt right. A pilgrimage. A ridiculous, perfect plan. He would wear his finest Mickey ears, perhaps even a sequined jacket. He packed his old sputtering Holden, suitcases filled with clothes, both his usual flamboyant attire and some more subdued options. Just in case, his Mickey collection, carefully wrapped, and the eulogy, smoothed out, read and reread. The car was a relic, prone to fits and starts, much like Yiros' temper, but it was his, and it would take him where he needed to go. He pinned a small Mickey plush to the dashboard for luck, for company. His brother Tom thought he was crazy. You're doing what? For who? But Yiros was determined. The road stretched out, a long grey ribbon, through dusty outback towns, past endless fields of sunburnt grass. The initial drive was lonely, just Yiros, his thoughts, and the hum of the engine. Doubts gnawed at him. Was this foolish, running away, or running towards something? He wasn't sure. The car threatened to break down twice, overheating near a place called Whoop Whoop. He managed to coax it back to life, with whispered pleas, and a surprisingly gentle touch. Maybe he was learning patience after all. He stopped at a roadside diner, all chrome and faded vinyl. He ordered a vanilla milkshake, extra thick, thinking of his father. The eulogy felt heavy in his bag. He pulled it out, read it softly to himself. The words still caught in his throat. This journey wasn't just about the speech. It was about something more. Something about finding his own voice, even if the only audience was a plastic mouse on a dashboard, and the wide, indifferent Australian sky. He had to do this. Near a town with a name like a forgotten song, his car finally gave a dramatic sigh and died. Steam billowed from the bonnet. Yiros kicked the tire. The old anger flared, hot, quick. He swore at the car, at the universe, then slumped against the door, defeated. That's when a brightly painted combi van pulled over. Music drifted from its open windows. A woman with kind eyes and rainbow-streaked hair emerged. "Trouble, love?" she asked. Her name was Sky, a traveling artist. Sky was a whirlwind of calm energy. She knew about engines and about people. She listened to Yiros' story, the funeral, the eulogy, the Mickey convention. She didn't laugh. She nodded, understood. Her traveling companion, a quiet man named Kai, who carved intricate wooden birds, offered Yiros water. They were outsiders too, living on their own terms. They saw Yiros, truly saw him. Not the problem son, not the weirdo, just Yiros, a man on a quest. They helped fix his car, a loose hose, a bit of know-how. Sky talked about finding your tribe, about how the world needs all colors, not just beige. Kai spoke softly about channeling emotions into creation. His birds were beautiful, smooth, perfect. Yiros felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Acceptance, simple, unconditional, from strangers. It was a balm to his bruised spirit. He shared some of his ice cream stash with them, a slightly melted tub of boysenberry swirl. For a few hours they were a small, unlikely family, parked on the side of a dusty road, sharing stories, laughter. Sky even admired his sequined jacket. "Fabulous," she declared. Yiros felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. These people, met by chance, offered more understanding than he'd often found in his own family. As he prepared to leave, Sky gave him a small, smooth stone. "For calm," she said. Hold it when the storm comes. He clutched it tightly, a new kind of talisman. The encounter with Sky and Kai shifted something within Yiros. He still felt the anger simmer sometimes, the old hurt. But Sky's stone was a reminder. He started to practice what she'd suggested. When frustration built, driving behind a slow truck, or when a motel room was dingy, he'd pull over, breathe deeply, focus on the stone in his hand, the smooth coolness. He'd try to name the feeling, not just angry, but frustrated, or disappointed, or scared. Giving it a name seemed to lessen its power. He started a journal, a cheap notebook from a petrol station. He wrote down his thoughts, his memories of his father, the good ones, the hard ones. He wrote about Mickey, about why he loved him, about the convention, his hopes, his fears. It was like lancing a wound, letting the poison out, slowly, painfully, but also cleansing. Kai's words about channeling emotion echoed. Maybe writing was his carving, his way of making something from the mess inside. One evening in a quiet motel room, he took out one of his dresses, a vibrant blue silk. He put it on, looked in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, he didn't see defiance or shame. He just saw Yiros, a person who liked blue silk, who felt good in it. He thought of Sky's words, the world needs all colors. Maybe his colors weren't so bad after all. Maybe they were just his. He even put on his Mickey ears and smiled. A small, genuine smile. The journey became less about the destination and more about the small moments of change. He learned to ask for directions without snapping, to wait in line with a bit more patience. He even started talking to strangers, briefly, about the weather, about the road, small connections. But they felt significant. The anger didn't vanish, but it felt further away, less urgent. He was learning to navigate his inner landscape with a new map, one drawn with softer lines and more hopeful colors. The Mouseketeers Unite convention was a joyous explosion of color. And ears. So many ears. People in full Mickey costume. People with subtle Mickey tattoos. Yiros, in his favorite sequin jacket and sparkling mouse ears, felt home. He had arrived. The air buzzed with enthusiasm, with shared passion. No one stared at his attire. They smiled. They complimented his sparkle. For the first time, he didn't feel like an oddity. He felt like part of a very specific, very wonderful tribe, as Sky had predicted. He'd signed up for an open mic slot, share your Mickey memories. His heart hammered. The old anxieties whispered, what if they laugh? What if they don't understand? He clutched Sky's stone, breathed, remembered his journal, remembered the feeling of the blue silk. This wasn't just for his father anymore. It was for him too, to speak his truth, in his own way, in his own colors. He saw a few familiar faces from online forums, people who understood the deep comfort of a cartoon mouse. When his name was called, he walked to the small stage. The lights were bright. He saw a sea of smiling faces and ears. He took a deep breath, unfolded the eulogy. This is for my dad, Arthur, he began. His voice shook a little. He wouldn't have understood this place, or me much of the time. A few chuckles, knowing, sympathetic. He talked about his father, the stern man, the hidden softness, the unspoken love, the regret. He didn't shy away from the difficult parts, or his own anger. Then he talked about Mickey, how Mickey was a constant, a symbol of hope, of kindness, how Mickey, in a way, had been the father figure he'd always understood. His voice grew stronger, more confident, tears welled, but he kept going. He spoke of his journey, of learning to accept himself, the anger, the dresses, the mouse ears, all of it. When he finished, there was a moment of silence, then applause, warm, genuine. Some people were dabbing their eyes. He had done it. He had spoken. and he had been heard. After the convention, something felt different, lighter. The knot in his chest had loosened. He drove home slowly. No rush. The old Holden seemed to run smoother. Or maybe it was just Yiros. He called his brother Tom. For the first time they talked. Really talked. Yiros told him about the convention, about the eulogy. Tom listened, quietly. Then he said, "Dad was proud of you, Yiros, in his own way. He just didn't know how to show it." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start, a bridge. Yiros returned to his small town, but he wasn't the same. He still loved Mickey, still wore his bright clothes, sometimes the skirt. But the anger, while not gone, was a smaller voice now. Manageable. He used Sky's stone. He wrote in his journal. He remembered to breathe. He even started a small online blog, Mickey, Me, and the Art of Being, sharing his journey, his thoughts on self-acceptance, and, of course, his love for all things Disney. Surprisingly, people read it, liked it, connected with his honesty. He started designing his own clothes, Mickey-inspired, of course, but with his own unique, flamboyant twist. A jacket with subtle ear-shaped lapels, a shirt with a pattern made of tiny, smiling Mickey faces, hidden in the swirls of color. It was a new passion, a creative outlet, channeling his energy, his emotions, just as Kai had suggested with his wooden birds. He wasn't just Yiros the misunderstood, or Yiros the angry. He was Yiros the creator, Yiros the storyteller, Yiros, simply Yiros. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, moments of doubt. But now, Yiros had tools and a newfound sense of self. He reconnected with Sky and Kai online. His tribe was growing. He even planned to attend next year's Mickey convention, not to deliver a eulogy, but to celebrate, to share his new designs, to be himself, unfurled, unapologetic, a quirky, colorful, wonderful work in progress. And that, he realized, was more than enough. It was everything.